My name is Kevin House, and today I'm going to be talking about antibiotic use in livestock production. So my opponent's first and main claim is that livestock antibiotic use helps treat any major bacterial. Antibiotic use in livestock is a necessary method. However, my opponent doesn't fails to explain and prove why it's necessary. And the secondary claims of my opponent are that number one, livestock antibiotic use helps treat any major bacterial illnesses. Livestock antibiotic use helps to prevent any major illnesses that livestock are at risk for. And livestock antibiotic use helps promote growth safely. So my response to my opponent's secondary claim one is that antibiotics given to livestock cause antibiotic-resistant infections in humans. Reason being is the overuse of antibiotics. According to the Federal Interagency Task Force on Antimicrobial Resistance, the extensive use of antimicrobial drugs in animals has resulted in drug resistance that threatens to reverse the medical advances of the last 70 years. This is essentially why antibiotic resistance is becoming such a major public threat. Humans are both at risk. Humans are at risk both due to the potential of the presence of these superbugs in meat and poultry. In one point of my opponent's first claim, they state that illness can easily spread across the herd, creating an epidemic and potentially wiping out the farmer's stock. However, they fail to explain how and why, and give little, if none, evidence and reasoning. Through research, I found that interaction between animals, like moving them through groups, like in groups, or if they had conflict over like food or what have you, that makes them more susceptible to developing an illness. Two substances that are included in the antibiotics that are given to animals are ionophores and tetracycline. Ironically, according to a letter to Congresswoman Slaughter from the FDA, 28% of all antibiotics sold for animal use in 2011 were ionophores. And this substance has actually never been approved for human use in medicine. Tetracycline used to be widely prescribed, but now it's limited to treating sexually transmitted diseases in humans. That takes me to my second claim. That there are several ways to prevent illnesses in livestock without antibiotics. My opponent claims that there's only one use, and it's with antibiotics. They don't go on to explain other methods of preventing illnesses in livestock. One of them is vaccination. According to Wanda Potch from Minnesota Farm Living, there are several ways in preventing illness in livestock from obtaining infections from bacteria. Strictly enforcing vaccinations from when they're in young age will keep them healthy, as does keeping close relation with a veterinarian so that it can monitor their health every day. Cleanliness, keeping the farms and barns clean by washing everything down. If everything was sanitary and clean, we wouldn't need to give them antibiotics. It doesn't really get rid of it, but it helps. Clean water, air, and feed. If the animals are kept inside, the farmers can control the weather conditions, making it less stressful for the animals, and they can't be attacked by airborne disease. Also, there will be no exposure to parasites and predators. Keeping the stress to a minimum. When you move animals from place to place, they feel stress, which makes them more susceptible to obtaining infection. Also have, but usually moving animals in groups, they tend to develop infections faster just because there's interaction, as I said before. So one of my points, one of my opponent's points in the second claim states that studies have shown that as the rate of animal illnesses increases, so do human illnesses. Basically what I just stated before, the reason human illnesses are going up is because the more that animals get sick, the more antibiotics we feed to them, resulting in a higher rate in which we consume those antibiotics and developing antibacterial resistant infections. Some mechanisms of resistance are decreased cell permeability to the drug, alter the drug binding recognition site, chemical modifications to the antibiotic, active transport, and enzyme or pathway alteration. In conclusion, the claim does not prove to be, it does prove to be a method, but does not take into consideration of what the externalities could be. My opponent ultimately did have a good speech, however, did not list. It was a claim of fact, but did not go into the reasoning and evidence that there are other methods to keeping animals from developing these diseases.
All right, structurally, I think you're in good shape. I'd like the counterclaim on the first point that suggests that drug resistance is a harmful consequence of this, and that's one of the reasons that we have to be worried about that in the first place. I thought that was pretty solid. The idea that illnesses are spread through a variety of techniques, that supports the information that you're making later on that suggests that there are alternative ways of limiting the illnesses being spread. So you've got basically a counterclaim here that suggests that there's a good justification for refraining from using antibiotics because they cause a threat, and that we have effective alternatives to having to use antibiotics. And I thought that those are good counterclaims that apply directly to the argument that's being presented. You get a little sidetracked sometimes in some of the details on the different types of antibiotics that are being utilized. I like the idea of the vaccines. I assume, though, that those are antivirals, so that's a different issue than the antibiotics that we're dealing with. And the idea that close monitoring, if there was a reason to believe that people were not doing those things, I think that would be a stronger argument there. Your third point basically just suggests that there are a whole variety of additional alternatives. I didn't really hear them being developed very effectively. And at the end, you kind of make an evaluation of the speaker, which is, a couple of people have done that. I know you're all trying to be polite to each other, and you don't want anybody pissed off at you, so you say nice things about one another, which is fine. But the truth of the matter is that's not really relevant. The issue is, was the argument sound or not? And your position as the refutation speaker should almost always be, there are problems with the argument. All right. Thank you for your patience, sticking around.